Otherworldlyculture.com presents a panel discussion with horror director and screenwriter Tommy Lee Wallace, moderated by Michael Exler, and recorded at Horror Realm 2026 in Pittsburgh.
So thank you for taking some time out and speaking with us today.
My pleasure.
So I read that you and John grew up together. Tell us a little bit about that and what you guys were like as kids.
I don't know if I should do that. Yes, we grew up in Kentucky. We were aware of each other from a very early age. I'm here with an old friend from Pittsburgh, also at the same school. We all grew up together. That's John over there. And by third or fourth grade, I was aware of John. He was a year older, so you know, when you're that young, that's a big gap. So he was a big kid. But by the time we became teenagers, we became friends and started playing music together, and got kind of a folk trio going with his girlfriend. And then we went electric and had a rock and roll band for several years. And so it was just very natural. In college, he went west and I went north to Ohio. But we corresponded the traditional way back then, snail mail. And the letters he sent back from California, Los Angeles, I was out on Sunset Strip last night, walked by the whiskey and the Doors were playing, and it's like, fuck, I gotta go. And so I eventually joined him out there. He was leaving University of Southern California as I was entering, and so we spent a lot of fun times together. As he was starting his career, I jumped in and helped him out on several of his early movies.
Do you have a positive view on film school? I've talked to some directors that don't, so what is your stance?
Very positive. I do. There was a film program at Ohio University where I went. There was certainly a film program at USC, and I became aware of several other film programs. I think what I loved about USC was it was kind of a no-nonsense program. They were not real big on aesthetics. They sort of let you do that. They were not an art school at all. They were more like a trade school. Here's how you make a movie. Here's how you operate a camera. This is all this. Sound over here. Production management over here. It was serious business. It taught you how. Most film schools, many film schools, I should say, are like, you'll see people just wandering around for years working on their film. Right, and it's like, let's get this going. And down there, you've cranked out movies and you finished them, and then you moved on to another one. And man, that was like a feeder, an on-ramp right up into the movie business itself there in Hollywood. So, no, if you find the right fit and the right school, I would say if you want to get into the movies, do it that way, if you can.
Yeah, it seems to set the foundation for you to go forward.
Yeah. Well, of course, there was all film history and all that too. I learned an enormous amount by attending a class like this with a filmmaker up front telling you all the war stories, and watching all the historic great films and all that. Yeah, great experience for me.
Do you think that's an important part, to be sort of a cinephile to make a good movie, or you at least know the history of what you're doing?
I think no matter what pursuit you engage in, it's good to know where it's been and where it might be going. That can only make you a stronger professional at whatever it is you're trying to do.
That makes sense. You started working with John on Dark Star. Were you still in school at that point?
Yeah, that was a student film that basically outgrew its boundaries. The simple fact is that John made Dark Star as like a 28-minute student project, And he and Dan O'Bannon were collaborators on that movie. Very ambitious for a student film. It's a science fiction, for those who don't know the movie. Science fiction satire came out a few years after 2001, A Space Odyssey, and just sent it up like crazy. Very funny movie and kind of endearing. But John basically just absconded with it, took it away from USC, who were technically the owners of the movie, and expanded it into a feature, made a deal with a guy, and off he went. I was still a student, and we were doing weekends, borrowing what we could, Scotch tape and chewing gum, putting together. John found some money and rented a soundstage for a few nights, and that's when I got involved. I was more Dan O'Bannon's helper than John's on that movie. I learned a lot from Dan, who's a brilliant production designer. And that was a movie made out of the trunks of people's cars on the weekends.
So that's when you look at the IMDb of that and it says someone does this, you all pretty much did everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So on moving to Assault on Precinct 13, it says you were the sound effects editor and art director.
Yes.
What do those entail?
Well, an art director, if you know the movie, this is kind of an homage in a way to Rio Bravo, Howard Hawks' Western, starring John Wayne and Dean Martin, in which a small group of people are holed up in a jail, and some really bad guys are outside, and they're basically holding out until the cavalry comes, really. John wrote a variation on that theme in a police station, modern day, and the bad guys were gang members who were real pissed off about, I can't remember exactly what, but they wanted to make mincemeat out of our heroes. And so that required a set, an elaborate 3-room police station set that we couldn't just move into a location because we basically blew it up. And so that's what an art director does, production designer, is design that set, build it, and basically adapt any location that you choose and make sure it works for the movie. Work closely with the director, help him with his vision. I didn't know it then, but I was doing a lot more jobs than strictly art directing of locations and drawing storyboards. I thought that's what you did, But that's how you get a low-budget movie made, is you do a lot of different jobs.
So I'm assuming that's the similar take for Halloween.
Well, it just became more official. On Assault on Precinct 13, I went to the cutting room, and John was cutting his own picture, which anybody who ever has that experience, it's really hard to do. You shoot this film, you sweat blood over every shot, then you go in the cutting room and try to put it together, and I don't need this shot, but I loved it, I worked so hard on it, and I'm going to leave it in. That's an editor's job, is to say, no, don't leave it in. This is a better scene without it. He didn't have the benefit of that because we couldn't afford one, an editor, and John is a good editor. So he was there, and since we're old friends, I dropped by, say hello, and I was also feeling a little bereft because it was like, on student films, you do all of it, all the way to the end. And on that movie, it was like, wait, I don't have any more job. The film is shot. Go see John. He's looking very lonely. And I said, give me something to do, in the cutting room. He said, can you cut sound effects? Sure. It's like learn as you earn, right? Only I wasn't earning much. But cutting sound effects on that movie was really, really an education, because you have all of these, if you can afford them, you have all of these things where you can add correct dialogue, and it's called looping, or ADR, and there are Foley stages where you can create footsteps and sound effects that you're missing. We didn't have any of that. All we had was Ben Burt, who gained fame with George Lucas on the Star Wars films. Ben had been the projectionist at USC, and he had taken sound, recorded sound from every movie he projected, meaning he had Fox ricochets and, MGM explosion #1. And I was like, dream come true. That saved our bacon because, sit down, get some sound effects from Ben, throw them in. And we could not afford an actual Foley session where you watch the movie and do footsteps and all that. But we could afford a Nagra, which is a professional level tape recorder. And so we would get out the Nagra. I would write the number of footsteps and the rough sequence, 3 seconds, and then 4 more footsteps, and then about 8 seconds, and go outside and perform them according to my little piece of paper, and then cut them in. And you either, that doesn't quite sync up, then you either create space and sync it up, or you pull it forward. That really was learning from the get-go. Originating sounds like bullet hits. When the bullet comes in, it was shot from a silencer, so what you hear is the bullet going into the flesh, and figuring out, well, how can I make that sound? Oh, big old pair of scissors and some cardboard, and go, like that. So that's how you do it,
Very cool.
Learning as you go along.
So, with Assault on Precinct 13, did you guys know you were going to get the reaction from the famous scene with the girl?
Oh, the kid gets killed.
Yes.
I think John knew he was going to create a sensation. Killing a kid is some sort of red line that we were crossing. And it was effective, and it was the simplest thing. Little ice cream cone, a little tube up the wrist into the ice cream cone, a little squirt of whipped cream and a blood pack inside, and then just, the air goes, cling, and that was that, learning those cheap tricks that work.
Very cool.
I think John knew he was going to get some, but the point was to get some attention.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's move to Halloween. You worked in front of the camera and behind the camera. Now, I've interviewed PJ, Jim Winburn, Tony Moran. I've interviewed a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Now, PJ said you were Michael Myers in the bedsheet. Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
that was Nick.
That was Nick?
Here's how it worked. Nick was the shape. Designated, John invited him to the set because Nick wanted to hang around the set anyway. He was a fellow student at USC. He wanted to learn. And here was a feature film, 35 millimeter, that even though we were on a shoestring, that's the big time. So he wanted to be there. And John said, well, why don't you just, wear the mask? Because could we afford to hire someone to perform? That's an extra actor. No, couldn't do that. So, and plus Nick moved well. His father was one of the Castles in choreography, Nick Castle Sr. And Nick certainly was a chip off the old block in that regard. He could move nice grooved movements, stand around, looming. Because he asked John, he was having to be an actor, although Nick's not any more an actor than I am. But he'd say, what do you want me to do? And he said, just stand there, and that's enough. Especially with that mask, it's scary just shooting the picture of it. So you didn't have to do a lot of theatrics to get the effect across. I came into the picture because on several occasions, including the big climax closet scene, the shape, well, we never called him Michael Myers. For that one moment when Tony Moran appears as Michael Myers, that's Michael Myers. In the script, the thing with the mask was always referred to as the shape. So anyway, interacting with the set or breaking through a door or busting a car window, any of that stuff, it really fell to me because I was far more likely, since I'd set up the set in all cases, I was far more likely to get it right on take one. That was the long and the short of it. So any interaction with the set, call me the utility shape, I guess. Let's see, so it was Nick mainly, me for action, Tony Moran for unmasking, and Jim Winburn did the stunt fall from the second story.
Yeah, he told me a story about how they came. Do you remember how that stunt was done?
Yeah, he would just, he backed up to the railing and launched himself off into a pad.
He said that he put Solo cups on the bottom of the piece of plywood and then put grass and everything over. So that's what took the...
when he the reverse shot. Yeah, because he didn't do the two-story fall for the reverse. He just kind of leaned back and went down.
That's what you guys had to do, though. You know, just come up with things that would work.
Well, you'll note that even on big pictures, very often stunt falls, what breaks the fall is not some fancy pad, but just a bunch of cardboard boxes. Even when they could afford a lot more, sometimes that's just the best thing to do a certain kind of stunt with.
So when you hear Halloween, you immediately think John Carpenter. But what about Deborah Hill? Talk about her and what driving force she was behind Halloween.
Deborah had been a script supervisor for several years on low-budget movies. I guess those were movies that were also on a budget, but they were more like teen, rock and roll high school, and other titles of that sort, done on a shoestring and featuring action and fun and low comedy and all that kind of stuff. That was, she was on those movies with Dean Cundy and crew, the director of photography. And she and John, Deborah got hired as the script supervisor on Assault on Precinct 13. That's where she and John met up and eventually became lovers. So when Halloween came along and suddenly we hear Deborah's going to be the producer, it's like, oh shit. The girlfriend is going to be the producer. This is going to be a disaster. Nepotism out the wazoo, or so we thought. But Deborah turned out to be a hell of a good producer, really smart, really forceful, dedicated, and just nailed it. She won everyone's respect. By the time we were shooting, there was no question that she was born to be a producer. And she delivered the goods. Very conscious of what a real, true producer is all about. Which basically is to support the entire picture and make it possible for the director and the actors and the filming crew, the camera crew, to do what they came to do.
Very cool, yeah. You don't hear a lot about her, so I just wanted to...
Yeah, and that may be part of the job description, in a way. Just as a smart director doesn't do so much fancy film work that he's constantly calling attention to himself or herself. Maybe a producer is in a similar category of the more invisible, the better for the movie.
Right. I read an interview that you had done that you were approached to direct Halloween 2.
Correct.
And you turned it down.
Actually, I wasn't just approached to do it. I was the director of record for a few days and excited about the prospect. but there were different opinions about what Halloween 2 was going to be. I was very interested in having a 5 years later kind of story. And those who are big Halloween fans of the whole series, H2O, in a way, echoed the idea I was having about Halloween 2, which is 5 years later, Laurie Strode, traumatized, going to some sort of really seriously secure college with big walls around it and stuff. And, you know, bottom line is any place that can be that secure can also be turned into a sort of prison without much trouble. John and Deborah decided that instead they were going to do a 5 minutes later sequel. And I wasn't sure how that would turn out. But I waited with bated breath and hoped for the best. But when John turned in the script, I hated it. I just hated it. Halloween, the original Halloween, I couldn't be prouder of that movie from every aspect. Excellent script, done the old-fashioned way, without much, if any, blood. We had a tiny little bit of blood, but not much. And certainly no gore. It's all done with suggestion and with traditional suspense tricks. Just, you know, a professionally done suspense thriller. and really turned out to be terrifying. Halloween 2 came along, and it was years later, and then in the meantime, a bunch of movies had come out, and there was a kind of arms race of violence, which leaned into gore, which to me was the antithesis of what the original Halloween was all about. And so when I read that, okay, now the character gets like a hypodermic in the eye, it's like, no, I can't do this. John and Deborah deserve somebody to do this movie who is really gung-ho and who loves it and who wants to go out there and really do it. I would have been faking it if I had tried to do that. It was a good opportunity, and I felt horrible about saying no, because I'm also saying no to my friends. Right. And even in Hollywood, even if it's friends, if typically when you say no to somebody, they stop returning your phone call, you know. But in this case, I just said I can't do this, and time went by, and I eventually got the call from Deborah about Halloween 3, and I was so pleased that my friends were inviting me back in. And as soon, you know, Deborah said, "How do you feel about directing Halloween 3?" And she heard me pause. She heard me stop and think about that, because Halloween 2, I figured, okay, more gore? I don't think so. And before I could answer, she said, "We don't have to follow, it's not going to be the knife and the shape and all that. Brand new, everything different." Yeah, I'm in. Just like that.
I read that they had a different vision for Halloween, didn't they? It wasn't going to all center around Michael Myers, was it?
Well, John, believe me, after Halloween 2, which was a struggle for John, because he now admits he hated it as much as I did, but he was making a lot of money. The struggle was that it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, and he had to shoot a lot of additional footage, and it was just a big pain in the butt. But he and Deborah both had enough of the Halloween phenomenon and the knife and all the rest. And so a condition of making Halloween 3 was that, okay, we're going to go in a new direction. That means, and brilliant, $1 million idea. Every Halloween, let's release a new story about the season. And yeah, what a cool idea. Unfortunately, there had already been a Halloween 2, Roman numeral 2, and so it had Halloween 3 been the follow-up to Halloween, we could have brought it off more easily because we could have sold that idea that, oh, we're going to do something different each time. Oh, okay. But after Halloween Roman numeral 2 and they come out with Halloween Roman numeral 3, everybody's assuming it's going to be the big knife and it's more Michael Myers and blah, blah, blah. So the audience felt ripped off in a way. It was a terrible backlash, and it has taken all this time for it to finally gain respect, and it's got wow, you know, redemption is sweet. The reception for Halloween 3 in the last 10 years has just been phenomenal.
I think it's a fantastic film, not just because you're sitting here, but it was a nice break from the same old same.
Yeah, thank you. I still think the idea of doing a different Halloween movie every year is a good one, but we never went back, you know.
You wrote Halloween 3 also.
I rewrote Halloween 3, as did John. The way that worked was Nigel Neal, a well-known, a real major name in British television, sci-fi, and horror in the 50s, was one of John's favorites. He was associated with the name Quatermass. He did several movies around that title. Quatermass was a character. John chose him to write a script, and when the script came in, there was a good side and a bad side. The good side was that the general idea of Halloween 3 was Nigel's. That is to say, a toy maker, an evil toy maker, who wants to wreak havoc on the world for Halloween through these masks that do some horrible thing to the children. That was his idea, and it was really twisted and wonderful and well done. He turned in his script. I think the reaction overall was we all loved this script with an asterisk, which was, yeah, it's demented, it's horrifying, it's all kinds of weird things, but it is also kind of a museum piece. In other words, this master of British television from the 50s wrote a script that felt like a British television show from the 50s. So it needed work, as they say in Hollywood. It needed sort of, you needed to consider your audience, which was like American teenagers and so forth, you know, that primary audience. And it needed to be Americanized and just needed punching up in a lot of different ways. John did a pass, and then I think John was a little surprised, but I rewrote him after that. John never was much in the habit of putting his name on script rewrites that he would do, so his name never appeared. Nigel, by this point, was a guy with a chip on his shoulder because he'd had lots of his material rewritten and butchered, in his opinion anyway. So very quickly he reacted badly to the idea of being rewritten, and he withdrew from the project and took his name off. So that's a roundabout way of telling you that that's the most inaccurate credit I ever got for a writing job. I did add a lot of stuff. I added the robotic, the executive-looking redhead Irish robots, and several other touches. But that was an odd collaboration between Nigel and John and me.
Now that kind of segues into my next question. Did you guys have Tom Atkins in mind, or did he come in and just fit the role?
We had gotten to know Tom through Adrienne Barbeau, who by this point John had married. He met Adrienne on a TV movie, and they had a romance and got married. And Tom was one of Adrienne's friends, along with his wife Garn, who plays Marge, the saleswoman in Halloween 3. Somebody, when we were starting to talk about casting for Halloween 3, we'd already seen Tom's work in The Fog, and as soon as his name came up, I was gung-ho. I was like, great, he'd be perfect, I love it, you know. And we were sort of leaning toward an ingenue for the female part, and he's clearly older, and we like that idea of there's some, it's exaggerating to call it a May-December romance, but there's something a little different from the usual, you know, chiseled hunk of about 28.
Right. And so you actually came up with the Silver Shamrock song and sang it, right?
That's correct. I was just talking to my buddy John about that. Deborah came to me and said, we need the jingle. We got to have the jingle. And I said, well, okay, I could come up with something. I said, maybe I can just use some available music. And she said, well, we don't have any money for this, so you're just going to have to, you know. And I thought about it a minute, and I decided London Bridge would be the answer because it's in the public domain. So I borrowed a left hand from an old recital piece called The Spinning Song, and so forth. Some of you have probably played that in your piano lessons when you were a kid. Anyway, it went just fine with and so that became the earworm that gets in your head and won't leave. And yeah, Alan, who's here at this show, Alan Howarth, I went over to the studio, and in an afternoon I did all the voices and all the instruments. And the voices, of course, are chipmunk-type voices. Record them at one speed and play them back at a higher speed. And it worked. Song drives me crazy. So, by the way, there's one item in the Trick or Treat Studios catalog that I make money from if you buy. It's this big, ugly plastic pumpkin that plays that tune, so go out and buy that thing. I don't think I make money on any of that other stuff.
So we're running out of time, but I have to talk to you about one last project. It's a little thing that you worked on, It.
Yes.
How did you land that role or that job?
The traditional way in Hollywood, virtually everyone has an agent, and my agent heard about a gig and put my name up for it, and they invited me in for a meeting, and I guess the meeting went well. You know, I think I charmed them with the idea that, look, we can all do scary stuff, we can all do suspense moments, we can all do shocks and pop-up scares. What this movie must have is a story about children, the rites of passage, the bonding, the terror that kids can go through, and although it's never stated, the nasty issue of child molestation. Well, I got all that, and I guess they respected that, and so I think that got me the gig.
Gotcha. Well, right now we are out of time, but thank you again so much for taking some time. He will be here all weekend. Go see him, get some autographs, some pictures.
Thank you.
Tommy Lee Wallace.
Thank you very much.
Otherworldlyculture.com. Subscribe, like, and comment on our posts all over social media and our site, otherworldlyculture.com.